Here's something most content consumers never stop to ask themselves. You have a watch history. It's right there on the platform, everything you clicked into, how far you got, that red bar under the thumbnail that tells the platform and tells you approximately how much of the video you actually consumed. Most people treat that as their record, their log, their archive, their account of what they've been watching and why. But watch history is not your consume digest. Watch history is a residue. This is the lingering after effect of what you clicked into and how deep you went. The platform generated that record. You didn't build it. And what the platform generated is a shadow of what actually happened every time you sat down and engaged with content. It is an incomplete picture, and in some important ways, it is the wrong picture entirely. Your consume digest is something different. It is bigger. It is more structured. It is almost entirely invisible to you right now unless you built the system to make it visible. That is what this video is about. Take a look at your screen. A crypto quick pick. Culture commentary. Question 1. What your consume digest actually is. Most content consumers think their watch history and their consume digest are the same thing. That the platform generated record of what they clicked on is a meaningful account of what they consumed and why. It is not. Here is the technical distinction. A consume digest is a multi-threaded hyperdimensional scaffolding of information. Let me unpack what that actually means before we go anywhere else. Your consume digest includes your watch history, but your consume digest does not stop there, not even close. It includes the synthetic watch history. A deliberate constructed playlist that functions as an authored record of your consumption, separate from whatever the platform is generating on its own. Some people pause or disable their watch history because it shapes their algorithm in ways they don't want. If you've ever done that, you may already have started building a version of this without naming it. A manual playlist you maintain to capture what you're actually watching because the platform's native record became unreliable the moment you cut it off. But beyond watch history, beyond synthetic watch history, your consume digest includes everything you've encountered as a cultural reference point that was never indexable by the platform to begin with. That is the key distinction. Think about how you actually consume content. Think. You open YouTube, you scroll, you read titles, you scan thumbnails, you swipe through shorts, and pause just a fraction of a second longer on some than others. And the platform is already registering that pause. You move through your subscription box for 6 minutes just to get back 1 week. You read dozens of titles without clicking a single one. You encounter a creator you've never seen before, recognize the subject from the thumbnail, and scroll past because the timing isn't right. And none of that gets saved anywhere. All of that is your consume digest. None of it is in your watch history. Your consume digest can be something as expansive as a full year of traversal across YouTube, across every category and subcategory you move through. It can be something as immediate as scrolling through Twitch, swiping through TikTok, scrolling through a Shopify page, or moving through a web browser without even clicking into a search box, just using search to understand what kinds of websites exist in a given space. A TV guide, if you still use one, is a consume digest. Everything you encounter as a cultural reference point is a part of your consume digest. Whether you clicked, whether you saved, whether you noted it consciously or registered it without realizing. And that is exactly what separates it from a watch history. A real consume digest contains everything: the titles and thumbnails you read and move past without ever clicking in, the reflections of culture You registered, scrolled through, briefly paused on, or skipped entirely. Watch history could never contain those. Watch history can only track what you clicked and how deep you went. The consume digest tracks what actually happened. All the content you came across that left an impression without leaving a trace. The difference matters for how you understand yourself as a content consumer because it means the story you're telling yourself about what you engage with and why, based only on watch history, is built on an incomplete residue. Watch history is what the platform recorded. Your consume digest is what actually happened. Take a look on your screen. Crypto 4, a quick pick series. Titles and thumbnails. Titles and thumbnails. Question number 2. The temporal playlist is the instrument that makes your consume digest visible. When you build a temporal playlist for a specific quarter, say a playlist for a Wednesday of Q3 2024, sorted by date added oldest first, and you start scrolling from the beginning, you're not just looking at archived videos. You're looking at a model of a content consumer at a specific moment in time. Now, what that model actually shows you depends on one thing first. How much content are you consuming? For someone consuming 3 to 4 hours of YouTube a day, 10 or more hours a week, the subscription box becomes physically impossible to scroll back through after a few months. On mobile, the server refresh rate and the device's RAM make it impossible to get to content from a year ago, sometimes even 6 months ago. Your watch history gets there eventually, but it takes real effort to navigate, and your subscription box, even harder. I cannot scroll back to my 2024 subscription box. It's physically not possible. The server just resets. That's what happens when you have over 1,300 subscriptions. But it can happen with less subscriptions, even at around 500. That is where the temporal playlist becomes powerful. Because a temporal playlist lets you go directly to a specific day of a specific week of a specific quarter. You designated it when you built it. Wednesdays, Q3, month 7, week 1, 2024. That structure exists now. You can return to it. That is what a structured record gives you that the platform's native surfaces cannot. A fixed point you can go back to anytime from any device without depending on the platform's memory to reconstruct the path. And when you do go back, you have access to 3 completely different analytical lenses for reading what happened in that window. The first lens is date added. Sorting by date added oldest first shows you the sequence in which videos were actually routed into this playlist. What went in first? What went in last? This is the curation decision sequence. It reflects what was worth indexing and in what order it was indexed. For me personally, date added is the lens that reflects my perspective most directly. As someone who functions as both a content consumer and a content curator, the date added sequence shows what I was pulling from my recommendation feed, from my subscription box, from my active search journey, and consciously routing it into this playlist as a structured record of that specific quarter. It shows my stratigraphy, the layered structure of how I was actually organizing my consumption at that moment in time. That stratigraphy is invisible in watch history. Watch history shows you what you clicked. It does not show you what you chose to keep or in what order you chose to keep it. The second lens is date published. Sorting by date published gives you an entirely different picture. Now you are not looking at the curation decision sequence. You are looking at what the content creators themselves were publishing. What was published first? What was published last? What does that sequence tell you about the aggregate publication patterns of the creators in the subscription universe? The channels subscribed to, the channels stumbled upon through the recommendation feed. This is demand side culture commentary. The publication sequence is a record of what the content creation community was doing at that specific moment in time. What they decided was worth publishing, when and in what concentration, around what particular subjects. You can read the cultural preoccupations of a given quarter through a temporal playlist date published sort in a way that no analytics dashboard reconstructs. The third lens is most popular. Sorting by most popular moves you completely outside both the curation sequence and the publication sequence. Now you are looking at what consumers actually engage with over time, what accumulated the most views, what did the algorithm sustain, amplify, or surface repeatedly to the broader platform community. This is where long run analysis becomes possible. A temporal playlist built in 2024 can be checked today. A video that had 100 views when that playlist was first completed, where is it now? Is it still there? Has there been a residual long tail growth in the content that it looked like it had no momentum at the time? Did someone have a breakout moment after the playlist was closed? And are they now experiencing residual growth on that same video? That is a dimension of culture commentary that's only accessible if you have the stratigraphy of how a video relates to its collective whole over time inside a specific playlist bucket. That is what you cannot read from a simple watch history, because watch history does not hold retention, it holds clicks. Three lenses, one playlist, a complete picture of what was consumed, what was published, and what was sustained from three distinct vantage points that the platform itself does not synthesize for you. Question number three, there's a concept called conscious competence, the state of being aware enough of what you're doing to actually improve it. Most content consumers do not have conscious competence over their consumed digest. They have no structured record of what they consumed. No way to see how different content spokes have been affecting them over time. What categories are growing, what categories are shrinking, what subjects they keep returning to versus what they think they care about. The four-stage cycle runs like this: unconscious incompetence. You don't know what you're consuming in any structured sense, and you don't know that you don't know. The platform serves you content. You watch it. It disappears into a residue, and the cycle repeats. This is the default state for most content consumers. Conscious incompetence. You become aware that there is a problem, that your consumed digest is real, that it is larger than your watch history, and that you have no system for seeing it clearly. You understand the gap, but you don't yet have the technique to close it. 3. Conscious competence. You are actively deploying technique. You're building playlists. You're naming them, choosing which playlist type applies to a given piece of content and why. You have to think deliberately about each decision, but the decisions are real and the record is being built. 4. Unconscious competence. The system is internalized. You know before you click whether something belongs in your ASAP quick pick, your category specific quick pick, or your temporal record. And the decision happens without effort. At this stage, your consumed digest reflects something close to the actual structure of your media intelligence. That cycle runs through technique, and the technique begins in one place. It begins with a title. That is where playlist theory enters. Playlist theory gives you a taxonomy, and the taxonomy has three core structures. The first is the ASAP Quick Pick. This is your highest priority transit playlist, the monthly rotating record for content that you want to capture immediately as it arrives. The titling schema runs by quarter and month. The current one is ASAP 19.2, meaning the 19th quarter of this running system. Within that quarter, month by month, 19.1, 19.2, 19.3, and then the next quarter begins. The second is the category specific quick pick. This is the topically bounded playlist organized by domain, culture commentary, natural science, esoteric, financial markets, security. Each category gets its own playlist, and as that playlist fills up, you open a new one in the same series. Culture Commentary 1, Culture Commentary 2, up to Culture Commentary 6. The numbering preserves sequence. You know which came first and which came last, and you can trace how a category evolved over time. What you're looking at on your screen is Culture Commentary 3, a playlist that's since been retired. The third is the temporal playlist, the time-bounded daily record we just walked through, organized by day of the week, by quarter, by year. This is the most labor-intensive structure in the taxonomy. It demands the most time to maintain. And I'll be direct about something here. I stopped making temporal playlists a couple of years ago. The time investment was real, and the revenue wasn't there to sustain it at the level of quality it deserves. That is an honest thing to say, and it means the temporal playlist layer of the system is not free. It has a real cost in sustained attention, and that cost has to be weighed against what you actually get from it. But the ASAP quick picks and the category specific quick picks, those have continued, and they have given me something concrete. I know that I don't have to worry about losing access to content that passed through my subscription box a year ago or 2 years ago. I have a structured consume digest across 12 ASAP playlists for an entire year. I can return to it. This is what conscious competence over your consume digest actually looks like. Not in theory, but as an operational fact. And every time, the path back to that record runs through the same place. It begins with the title. Take a look at your screen. And this is some of the content that we curate. Culture Commentary 3. Since been retired. Titles and thumbnails. It's what makes up the discipline of content consumption and curation. Understanding what those titles and thumbnails represent for you as a consumer and for your audience. Question number 4. If you are a content creator trying to understand your audience, analytics gives you numbers, views, watch time, retention curves, click-through rates. Those numbers tell you something about your own channel's performance. They do not tell you what a real consumer was actually traversing in the 3 months before they found you. A temporal playlist from an active content curator gives you something that analytics cannot produce. A window into the actual variety and texture of what a voracious content consumer, someone actually consuming 3 to 4 hours a day of YouTube, was coming across over the course of a quarter. Here's what makes that different in practice. The temporal playlist is a dynamic playlist. You can change the sort order at any time. Date added oldest, date added newest, date published oldest, date published newest, most popular. Each of those sort orders gives you a different cross section of what was happening in that window. You can see what was being published at that moment in the creators. You can see what was being published at that moment by the creators in a specific consumer's subscription universe. You can see what that consumer was actively routing and indexing, what they decided was worth keeping, and in what sequence. You can see what the broader community ended up engaging with most from that same set of content over the long run. The platform gives content creators data about their own performance. A curator's temporal playlist gives content creators something the platform cannot offer. A synthetic baseline for what a synthetic baseline for what a real content consumer was actually traversing, in context, in sequence, in relation to everything else that was being published and recommended in the same window. That is a fundamentally different data source, not because it is larger than what analytics provides, but because it reflects the demand side, not as a statistic, but as a structured, returnable, cross-sortable record of all actual consumption decisions by an active content consumer in a specific moment in time. Question number 5. Take a look at your screen. This is a social science 4 quick pick, the 4th iteration in our social science quick pick series. Question number 5. Watch history is the story the platform tells about you. Your consume digest is the story you would tell about yourself if you had the system to tell it. These two stories are not the same. The gap between them, the space between what the platform recorded and what actually happened, is where a significant amount of self-knowledge about your own media consumption lives. So, what does it actually look like to build that second story? It looks like authoring playlists. It looks like indexing your consume digest into different buckets that reflect moments of your life. A temporal record for a specific quarter, a category specific record for a domain you return to regularly, an ASAP record for what arrived this month and mattered enough to keep. But, but But before that playlist, before the system, before the taxonomy, there is one question you have to be able to answer. Why is this video worth adding? You have to understand that why before playlist theory can mean anything. Because you can adopt the technique without the understanding. You can add videos to playlists as a habit, follow the naming schema mechanically, and still have a consume digest that is indexed but not legible. A structured container without a structure of thought behind it. Even that matters. Even that level of deliberate intermediation, actively deciding to route a video into a playlist rather than clicking and forgetting, changes how you engage with the cybernetic ecology. It changes your neural pathways. You're interacting with the platform instead of simply receiving it, and that changes how the platform interacts with you. But it is not enough by itself to generate real self-knowledge about your own media consumption. For that, you need more than a habit. You need intention behind the habit. You need to understand what a consume digest is, why it matters, and what you're actually trying to make visible by building one. And then you need a system. And the system begins with a title. Now, I want to name something directly because this is the real distinction that most content on this subject glosses over. Playlist theory is not for everyone. Not everyone's consumption velocity makes this worth building. If you're a content consumer who watches casually, YouTube in the background after work, a few videos on weekends, shorts during a commute, then honestly, you may not need to index your consume digest. The tools the platform gives you might be sufficient for where you are as a consumer. And that is a completely legitimate place to be. Everyone has a consume digest. Not everyone needs to structure it. The question is, has your consumption outgrown the platform's native memory surfaces? Has your watch history become something you can't navigate back through? Is your watch later a graveyard of 1,000 videos you've added and never returned to? Does your subscription box move so fast that content from 3 weeks ago is already unreachable? If yes, if the platform's memory systems are no longer sufficient to hold what you're actually consuming, then what you're missing is a structured consume digest. And the first move towards one is the same move every time. It begins with the title. Take a look at your screen. This is Crypto 1, the first crypto quick pick involving technical analysis, fundamental analysis, and market culture commentary related to the blockchain markets as a whole, with a specific focus on Bitcoin and other aspects of the crypto culture commentary industry. So we double back and we ask, if this is your experience and you've built out the actual categories, the structures, and the records, then this is the place to go. Mr. Pollock 890 is our playlist archive channel. It is where the system described in this video exists publicly across every category and format we've introduced. This is something for you. If you've found a takeaway in terms of the technique that we provided, in terms of understanding what your consume digest is and what it references in relation to you. The system where that exists in most readily is in our playlist archive channel, Mr. Pollock 890. If you want a structured entry point, start with the Start Here playlist. That playlist is designed to orient you to how the archive is organized and what's available across the full channel. If you already know what you're looking for, go directly to the post section. Both the public playlists and certain unlisted playlists are listed there. Browse by domain. Find whatever category you're currently consuming. The archive is open. Take a look at the home tab on mobile and desktop, and you'll find our category specific quick picks along with some experimental temporal playlists. Check out our playlist tab and check out the posts tab. But the primary is home tab and the playlist tab. Remember, the playlist is the path. It begins with a title. Go to Mr. Pollock 890. That is Mr. Pollik 890. I hope you enjoyed the content scrolling on your screen, the titles and thumbnails of content we've curated over the years. Thank you, and enjoy your afternoon.